This is Cageside Jay. I'm with Cageside Mike on something we might call the drive-in on our lovely drive to the office, which is far longer and more frustrating than it should be. So we're going to shoot the shit about MMA, and there is a bunch of shit in the news, which I don't know if you caught.
I don't think I have.
So
went home and slept.
Oh, that's the other joy of our lives. So, you know what? Bill and Ted 3 is a go. Not that that has anything to do with this, but I just want to say that.
That matters to everyone.
That matters to everyone. Pluto might be a planet again. NASA wants to make it a planet again. So King Flippy Nips there is going to be thrilled.
Oh, good for them.
And the UFC is talking Diaz GSP for August.
You know what? You mentioned it. I did hear something about that.
So, and that's Nate Diaz. And I don't want to give the impression that this is a done deal because it's not. But there are a lot of pieces that would fall into place that make a lot of sense. And for all the grief this is going to get for, matchmaking as far as what is the point of making this fight and what is the point of making it now, it actually makes a certain kind of sense. Because if you do GSP Nate Diaz in August, and there's a lot of ifs that this is riding on, Conor McGregor does come back in September, does get the fight with Khabib, beat in Russia, beat in Las Vegas, all of a sudden, you've got this little four-person dance going where the winner of Diaz GSP is ready for the winner of McGregor Khabib come the big New Year's Eve show at the end of the year. All of a sudden, that's 3 pay-per-views that can draw $1 million.
Well, they'll need it after this week's, right?
I'm just burying 224.
Shots fired.
It's
not the best card.
No, it's not, and I think the big thing is nobody's talking about it, so you kind of do know. They're also not promoting it, which is something Jason Payne brought up and a few other people when we were talking earlier about. You've got your first openly gay champion. You've got an openly gay title challenger. Are you promoting that at all? Like, yeah, Ronda Rousey goes on Ellen, and you can't get Amanda Nunes on there?
Yeah, but it's the UFC. They're not good as a promotion. They're not good at promoting.
That they are not. Okay, so let's go back to.
But back to the original
GSP Diaz. First of all, is that a fight that makes sense? And keep in mind, they're doing it at lightweight.
Well, okay, that's assuming we live in a world where these fights are supposed to make sense anymore, right? Like, the UFC at this point, does anyone think they're a legit sport? Like, as far as being a league, they want to be the NFL, or is that still a thing, or are they just trying to make that $4.2 billion back?
Well, I think the let's be like the NFL, let's get uniforms in, let's be a legitimate sporting league, that time came and went when the Fertittas were still at the helm. I think when they sold off the WME, realistically, it became about the money, it became about the bottom line, and it became about the $4.2 billion.
So we're moving closer to boxing, where there are fights that make sense, and not every fight needs to make sense. Like the way that you describe it, if it worked out that way, beauty. But GSP, even when he came back, it was like he just wants to have certain fights, and I think he's kind of earned that at this point, right?
Now, I think in the short term it makes a lot of sense. First of all, when you look at the first half of the UFC's year, some of the best cards have actually been on free TV. Pay-per-view wise, there have not been any blockbusters. I mean, 220, where you had the heavyweight and the light heavyweight title on the line, underperformed as far as buy rate goes. And that says a lot when the best title challenger they've had in ages, or realistically, the most imposing, the most marketable, if you want to just market him as a scary guy. And I have my issues with marketing Francis Ngannou as just a scary guy as well, but you could market him that way. They did market him that way, and he still, didn't put that show over the top. 221, well, that card nearly went down in flames in Perth. 222, again, Cyborg came in and saved that card, but, I mean, it was ravaged by injury. You had Holloway out. You had Edgar stay on and get knocked out. 223, which is probably the biggest card they've had this year, really got put over the top because Conor McGregor attacked a bus. Yeah. So
even when he's not fighting, he's still promoted.
He's still, if you want to call it that, he's still promoting it.
Going crazy. Get attention.
Now, I think the thing is, if you look at the second half of the year, all of a sudden these fights make a whole lot of sense, short term at least, because you do have 3 fights that could potentially, if it were to all work out, all the pieces got moved into place the way they would hope, you got 3 potential $1 million buy rate plus cards.
Now, my question is, Diaz, GSP, who do you think was pushing for that fight? Was that the UFC coming to them saying, hey guys, this is what we want to do? Was it GSP saying, hey, this is someone I'd like to fight?
I think that's a good question, and Dana White says, and I can't remember if he said it to ESPN or if it was UFC Tonight, but he did come out and say this is the fight that they are trying to make. This is the fight that the UFC wants, and it does seem that they're trying to make it a lightweight. Nate Diaz, man, has Nate Diaz asked for any fight? It seems like they go to him and he turns a bunch of stuff down. I don't know that Nate's really been asking for anyone. I don't know if that's his style. He just wants the right offer.
I agree with that. I think he's waiting for them to bring him the right money, the right person to fight. GSP's that guy.
He is that guy. I mean, ideally, I don't think anybody turns down a GSP fight.
No.
Now, the other part of that is that something GSP was looking for? Well, GSP's been very careful about not calling out guys smaller than him, and he did it specifically with McGregor. When they asked him if, would you fight Conor, he was kind of like, well, it would be an honor, but I won't call out a smaller guy, but if that's what he wants or that's what the UFC wants, maybe it'll happen. He left it open, but he's been real careful not to call out smaller guys. This fight happening at lightweight, I think a lot of that goes back to the issues he had moving the middleweight when he won the championship against Bisping, and he was having all kinds of side effects. And we looked at photos of him recently. He's all slimmed down.
Swole SP, looking all puffy.
So he's all slimmed down now, and he looks like he could make lightweight all of a sudden. And he's always said that he probably could.
Well, I'm wondering how much trouble it was for him to get up his weight, because he looked big,
and he talked about throwing up constantly leading into that fight. So if that's the case, and if he's taking weight off in a healthy fashion and he's just smaller now, hey, go for it. And then it makes all the sense in the world, because now you're not really fighting a smaller guy. I mean, Nate's fought at 170, which GSP ruled the roost there for years and years. So if he can make it down, if they're both the same weight, I don't have a problem with it. The only problem with this long term is no matter who wins, you've got 4 guys who barely set foot in the cage in the past several years.
Well, no matter who wins, do the fans win out of that? Like, you're going to see if you see GSP and Conor go, I think everyone would be cool to see that, right? Like,
well, with the title on the line, what does it do to the division? All of a sudden, you've got a logjam that you just cleared, supposedly. And I say supposedly because you've still got this whole Tony's the interim champ.
Well, we'll just do an interim title.
Well, we throw those around like they're cracking back box prizes at this point.
It's the precedent that's been set. The UFC is the Oprah Winfrey of promotions. You get a title, everybody gets a title.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm going home with a title. I didn't know I had that opportunity. Right. I think a lot of people are probably having that reaction.
Everyone in this section, look under your seat. There's a title.
Okay, fair enough. They do an interim title. So, is there a downside only among the hardcore fans who are going to complain? They're going to complain if Conor McGregor wins it because he never defended. They're going to complain if GSP wins it because he's probably going to retire. If Nate Diaz wins it, he's probably not going to fight for 2 more years. He's going to go do some triathlons, do some biking, smoke some weed, and enjoy his life, which I don't actually blame him for. But, Habib wins and he gets hurt.
2 things. Or he has another fight like he had, which wasn't the most exciting thing either.
Wow, if you're talking about 223, I don't think we can blame that on him. That was a whole mess of a situation.
Yeah,
so.
well, true. I don't know. This is the thing. I think that there's a certain segment of fans that are never going to be happy, to a degree. And I don't think the UFC cares. Because those people, the UFC, they may take it for granted and say, you know what, these guys are the guys who are giving us money anyways. We're going to put fights on because we want that mass market appeal, right? We want people talking about the UFC. People don't talk about the UFC unless it's like Conor McGregor or Ronda Rousey.
And you know what? That's an interesting point, because when you look back at that Conor McGregor bus attack, the fight to make is Conor versus Khabib. If it wasn't before, it sure as hell is now.
Oh, it'd be huge.
Like my parents, who know nothing about MMA, realized what was going on, saw that on CNN. It was front page news all over the world. Yeah. Now that brings us to the next topic of the day.
Wait, they do it in Russia too.
Oh, if you can, absolutely.
And then be like Rocky.
Although
Except he's Irish.
Dana White's saying no. He's saying Vegas is where you do that fight.
I see. You know what? This is the thing, and like the economics of it all. I wonder, is it worth the UFC to go to Russia and do that fight?
Right? If you're doing it in a stadium versus Vegas.
Well,
I mean, the thing with McGregor is he has one of he's got the highest, gate when it comes to UFC events. Like the live gate for him, the ticket prices are going to be astronomical because it's Conor McGregor, where another pay-per-view in Vegas or New York or anywhere else isn't going to have the same gate. They're not going to charge.
You know what? I'd rather see that fight happen in New York, I think.
Yeah.
If they're going to have it in the U.S., right? Realistically, I would love to see that fight happen in Russia. That would be and like story-wise, if they want to do a good promotion, which they may or may not, it'd be cool. Either way, it sells and it goes. But at this point, I don't think the UFC really cares about the hardcore fans much, because they have them, right? I think they want that mass market appeal. They want more eyes on the product. They want to be able to sell get that better TV deal, right?
Which does take us to the next topic of the day, which is the UFC has announced a 15-event per year deal with ESPN. Exclusive. ESPN will stream 15 UFC events on ESPN Plus.
That's how in sync I am. That I knew we didn't talk about that before. But we were going to have this be the next thing we were going to talk about. I actually don't know any of the things we were talking about. We're just doing it. You know what? And I don't know. My problem is the fragmentation of being able to watch this stuff. The problem with the UFC now is there's too much of it. You can't have too much of a good thing. And now they're putting it on Facebook, Fight Pass, ESPN, Fox, or some other network, pay-per-view.
It's kind of all over the map.
And it's a shotgun thing. So if you want to watch it, you know what? If I can't just open an app or go to a site and just go there, and I have to be like, yo, what is this thing on? Like, that's a pain in the ass.
So the question is, will the hardcore fans follow? So here's the deal. From what was reported, they didn't announce any financial terms. The Sports Business Journal says it's $150 million a year, which if you take that at face value, for that's a deal, that is more than Fox is paying them right now for the entire UFC Fox deal annually.
But ESPN has been hurting too.
ESPN has been hurting. They also want to get this ESPN Plus streaming service off the ground. UFC has a younger demo. It skews younger, so hey, let's get the millennials in.
Live sporting event.
And it's a live sporting event. Now, it's ESPN, so they know what they're doing. The upsides of the UFC is really, I think, the exposure, because they have always coveted that exposure on the major sports networks, the major news networks. I don't want to say anything, overly hostile about it, but they've never been the biggest fan of MMA media. They want what they consider to be legitimate media, which, I take some issue with, because, hey, you got guys who have been covering the sport for years and years and years, and no, they weren't necessarily traditional media, but they worked their butts off. Yes, traditional media has the reach, so I do get it. So I think the upside really is the exposure. You're going to see way more UFC content on ESPN.
That goes back to what I was saying. I think they care more about the casual fan at this point, and that would be ESPN, right? However many subscribers have ESPN. How many billion people?
I think the last I heard it was in the 80s in the States.
Even if you get half of that, even if you get a quarter of that,
well, you know what? Fox Sports has a similar number of subscribers. It sounds silly, but at the end of the day, a few million here and there doesn't make that much of a difference. Are UFC broadcasts going to do that much better on ESPN? Well, no. In fact, on their streaming service, they're probably going to be seen by less people overall. This is all about what the UFC is getting per year, and that $150 million being more than Fox pays for their entire broadcast deal right now per year, that's a big win for the UFC because now, okay, we got 15 events streaming on ESPN. Also, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, and a shout out to Nolan King from MMA Today, who actually broke that news a while ago. So it is moving over. It's funny because I was at UFC Atlantic City, and some of the production guys were asking, who's this Nolan King dude? Because he's saying we're going to ESPN, and we haven't heard anything about it. But they wanted to know if he was legit. Well, now those guys have their answer, because obviously he was on the money with that one. So to ESPN goes the Contender Series. They'll have pre- and post-fight coverage, a new show produced by WME from the sounds of it, and probably some other stuff as well. So there'll be a fair amount of content. That's going to leave another 24 or so live events to air on network television or cable TV, be it NBC Sports or be it Fox. As far as I know, Fox is still in the running. I have a feeling you will see the UFC stay with Fox, and this ESPN deal is going to be in addition to. What you're going to lose is the exclusive Fight Pass events, which there haven't been that many of lately anyways.
They should, Fight Pass.
Well, what does that do to Fight Pass? The hardcore fans have it. I have it. Other people have it. Right? What's left? I mean, okay, look, I'm not in the States. I'm in Canada. So this ESPN deal doesn't really apply. We don't get ESPN Plus here. We don't even get ESPN here. We get the Sports Network, which is similar. And all the content is either going to be on Fight Network, TSN, or Fight Pass for us still. But if you're in the States and you have Fight Pass, what's the draw now? They got Invicta, they got the Fight Library, Glory Kickboxing, if you're into that, and some prelim fights for every event.
Okay. How much does the UFC really care about? Like, what was Fight Pass supposed to be? Like, was it their idea of, like, the WWE network? Is that what it was going to be, and then they decided not to do it? Is this just a thing? Do they feel like they needed to do it to be a big company? I
think initially a big part of it was the library. You have this massive library, and because they've bought out the competition, they have all those libraries. They've got Affliction and Pride and Strikeforce and WEC, all these amazing libraries of old fights that you want to be able to profit off of. And yeah, you can put the highlight shows on cable television and draw a few viewers and make a few bucks. But realistically, again, for the hardcore fans to offer that library as part of a streaming service, it made a certain amount of sense. But I think the fan base in general, the MMA media in general, we all thought it was going to be the UFC's answer to the WWE Network. And if you look, the WWE Network is now a huge deal. I mean, it's their business model, really. Yes, they still have Raw and SmackDown on cable TV, but everything else you can get on the network. We all thought it was going to be that, and now it seems like kind of a half-finished concept that didn't quite make it. And ESPN Plus viewers, subscribers, they're going to be able to still get pay-per-views through ESPN Plus from the sounds of it. Obviously, they got to pay extra. Apparently, they're going to be able to get Fight Pass as well. I don't know if they're getting a discount, which would kind of make sense. Get them in the door and
Fight Pass, they'll probably keep it around because...
Oh, they'll keep it around.
For the rest of the world, right?
For the rest of the world and for the library. But
like, the thing is, if it's just the library, like, I love Pride. I don't have Fight Pass. Well, if I got it, how much am I going to rewatch all those Pride events? Yeah. Like, you need something, like, ongoing content to keep people paying the...
And they will still have Looking for a Fight, I assume, because the only Contender Series, for what we know, is going to ESPN. They'll still have, the early prelims on pay-per-views, and let's say the UFC does stay with Fox, early prelims, say, on Fox cards. The ESPN streaming shows are going to be exclusively 12 fights, all of them on ESPN+.
Yeah, you know what? Anything that fragments stuff more than it already is, I'm not a fan of that. I don't like it. I really don't. Like it. Yeah.
You want a one-stop shop. You want the superstore.
You know what? I would be okay with maybe 2, maybe 3. This is going to take to like 5.
Is it though? Because you've got. Okay, well, let's break it down.
Are we counting Facebook?
Well, there's nothing on Facebook anymore.
Oh, they stopped that.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Look at him stepping into. I don't know, when did they stop at? Like 2014? I think around the time.
I never watched anything on Facebook. I just like, oh, whatever.
No, you've got the early prelims on Fight
Pass now. They moved that, yeah.
So they'll still have the early prelims for pay-per-views or whatever. You'll have ESPN Plus's exclusive shows. Let's say they stay on Fox. You have the big Fox shows, the Fox Sports shows, and pay-per-view. So that is actually 5 different places you're going to have to go to get your full UFC fix if you're going to watch everything.
Who thinks that's a good idea? If you have a product, who thinks that's a good... And it's not the same product across everything. It's like, oh, you want this? Oh, you got to go over there and get it. Oh, you want this? Well, you can only get it here.
Yeah, I think there's a... I mean, if you look at other major sports, yeah, you've got to switch networks from time to time. Like, let's take hockey. NHL playoffs are on.
Or football.
Or any major sport, but let's just do the hockey analogy right now. Really simple. You know, you got a couple of channels that your favorite team is playing on.
Yes.
But that's it. You don't got to order the playoffs for extra money. There's no pay-per-view Stanley Cup final.
No.
All right, which is basically what you can think of as pay-per-views now. You get the best of the best on pay-per-view. Allegedly, it doesn't always work out that way, but you've got that. And never do they say, well, you got to watch the warm-ups or even the first 5 minutes of the first period exclusively on a streaming service, then switch to a broadcast network to get the next part of the game. And when the game is, in the final moments, now you got to pay for it.
Or overtime.
Or whatever.
It's overtime, now you got to pay.
Now, if I got to watch every fight on a pay-per-view card, I'm watching the pay-per-view, I'm watching Fox or Fox Sports, I should say, and I'm watching Fight Pass. So I got 3 outlets. Now, that's always been the case for a long time. But realistically...
But it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be. Like, especially if you're going to the more casual fan, if they want that demographic, yeah, more casual fans get to do the pay-per-view or maybe put it on TV. But why have things split across? If something really good happens on the prelims and they don't have time to re-air it, and that person wants to see it, and they're like, oh, maybe I should start watching this. Then they're like, well, I have to go here, I have to go to the app, I have to go to this network, I have to order the pay-per-view. Like, as someone who wants to get my product to more people, it doesn't make sense to have it be fragmented and scattered on 3-4 different platforms.
Or, 5 in this case.
Or 5.
Okay, so then the argument being, what do you do with Fight Pass? Do you just make that the library and looking for a fight and Invicta now and have all live events televised and maybe pay-per-view? I mean, they don't want to get away from the pay-per-view model. There's another thing that no one's brought up about this, though, and I'm kind of going to go off on the side a little. So you got 15 events on ESPN. Let's say you've got 24 on a broadcast network, Fox, NBC Sports, whoever.
Are you going to burnout?
Well, I mean, in previous years, the UFC got as high as 45 events. I believe this year they're on track for 39 or 40. I'm not 100%.
They cut them down a bit.
They did. They scaled it back a little because there was a point where they were just oversaturated. And there was fatigue, there was viewer fatigue.
Absolutely.
Especially when they were doing 2 cards on one day. You remember that?
Yeah.
You had like the German card in the morning, and then the American card in the evening, and
who thought that was a good idea?
I have no idea, because 12 hours of MMA, for a guy who covers the sport, I had to do a couple of marathons. It was not fun. At the end of it, I just wanted it to be done. And I'm a guy who covers the sport. I got paid for some of that.
It sounds like that's what they're going back to, though. Like, there's going to be... If they're doing 15 events on ESPN...
And maybe 24, so how many pay-per-views do you do?
Well, if they're sticking to the model, if we're having a pay-per-view every month, well, now you're at 27.
Well, you're at more than that, right? So if you're doing 15, and then the 24...
No, but I mean, I'm talking like, you get the 15 on ESPN, you do the pay-per-views, you get another 12.
Yeah.
If you only do one a month. Now you also have the network TV. Well, how many network TV ones are they going to have?
Well, as I said, maybe 24.
So...
You're up to like 50. You're up in the 50s almost. If not. Now, this is the question, though. Do they do... Right now, they actually do 14 pay-per-views a year. They don't even do just 12.
Wow, yeah.
So do you start scaling back? Do you do 6 a year, but stack them? Because let me tell you, 6 pay-per-views a year with guys who can really draw, like the McGregors and the Diaz's...
Well, it makes up for the ones that do
GSPs.
like 125,000,
Yeah.
150,000 buys.
Yeah. And then the next question is, and this came up in a lot of the...
You know what? You turned into, like, going back to wrestling. They have the TV show, and then they have, like, their big events, like WrestleMania and whatnot.
Yeah.
Why can't that work for the UFC?
And I think it could, and that's what I was going to get to is, you know, you look at something like what the WWE does. I'm not the biggest WWE, follower. I watch it from time to time. They do a good job creating stars. They've got the brand split thing going on where there's guys who are for Raw and guys who are from SmackDown, and occasionally they cross over on a pay-per-view. I think the one thing with this deal that no one's talking about is ESPN and whoever the broadcast network turns out to be going to have more say in who appears on their shows. Because that was the rumor heading into the negotiations. There were a few. One was that the UFC wanted the network to pick up a lot of the production cost. But the flip side of that was, and you're going to choose who's on your show, or at least you're going to have more say. Are you going to be able to say Conor McGregor fights every 2 months? No, because he's fighting on pay-per-view.
Well, now if you have ESPN, if you're ESPN, and let's say I'm Fox, and we have 2 events coming up, we both want the same guy, who wins?
Well, this is a question of maybe you have guys who are exclusive. In some cases, there's got to be some overlap, especially because of the nature of the fight business. There's injuries, there's last-minute opponent changes. But maybe Donald Cerrone is a guy who's exclusive to Fox, and maybe, Joseph Benavidez is a guy who's exclusive to ESPN. And you have a basic roster just with some of the, especially the guys I want to say mid-card to high mid-card, who, if they are exclusive, they're still going to get to fight 3-4 times a year, but it's not going to hurt if they're not showing up at a pay-per-view. It could work, and you might actually be able to build some guys in the stars, which, the UFC needs to do. They need to build these guys in the stars.
Well, I like the idea where they go to less pay-per-views. I like that idea. And it may cause short-term pain for the company. They may lose some money to start with. But I think if they go to more of an open kind of distribution model, TV, whatever, that's more easily accessible, you're going to have an easier time building those stars on those platforms, and then having a couple events throughout the year, maybe 6 a year, maybe less, depending on how you want to do it, and make them like big Super Bowl, WrestleMania, like playoff events where you can have, the best guys you have fighting, and girls, and the best fighters fighting the best fighters. Do they have the foresight to see it that way, as opposed to being like, well, we need to have our 150,000 buy pay-per-view every month or something? You know what I mean?
Well, and there's the question. I could see them going to maybe 8. I think that would be a starting point. I question how much of a pain period there would be, only because if the ESPN deal is $150 million a year, the rumored offer on the table from Fox, I think, was 200 to 250. Let's take the low end of that, say 200. You add the 150, you got $350 million a year. They were looking for 450. I think everybody shoots high when you enter a negotiation. There's different schools of thought, but assuming they didn't actually think they were going to get 450, I don't think 350 is bad. Especially when they started that Fox deal, it was like $100 million a year. I think it went up to 120. And the final year of the contract, I know, which is this year, had a little more. But if they manage to come out of this getting $350 million a year between whatever broadcast network and ESPN, I think they're golden. Now, the ESPN deal is 5 years, so 5 years down the road, who knows what things are going to look like and whether or not this experiment worked. But they're giving it a try, so it's going to be interesting. It's not going to affect my viewership because I'm not in the States. I'm really curious to see how the American viewers follow along, whether or not they jump to the new platform and pay. I think ESPN Plus is like $4.99 a month for them.
Oh, that's not bad.
No, it's not. So it'll be interesting.
It's like $20 Canadian now.
Oh,
is it?
So sadly true. All right, I think that's our topics, man. That's a wrap.
Is it? We're good.
We're good.
Hopefully it recorded well and you didn't hear me revving the
engine too much, cutting off some guy in traffic.
Yeah.
Remember, kids, drive like an asshole.
Only if you want to get there quick.